David Jordan, thanks for all you do, especially your book, Scientology A to Xenu. It really detailed some things about Dianetics when it first appeared, and then went away, that just were not detailed before. My question is this. Before you left Scientology, you had mentioned you started seeing indicators, for example, internet, other research, that led you to believe that Scientology wasn't all they wanted you to believe it was, and you left. But can you please explain how long these thoughts were there before you left Scientology? Also, did you plan your departure hours, days, weeks, months before you finally left? And if you did plan this, did you have any internal Scientology person's help? All right, well, let me tell the story here of how I actually first started getting doubts and reservations about what I was doing with Scientology. In 2002 or 3, somewhere in that time period, I went on a project. I was in the Sea Organization and in management, and I went on this special project to San Diego. And in 3 weeks, we recruited, 19, 20 auditors for San Diego org. And by we, I mean the staff. I went down there and I kind of kicked their butts in a really, fun kind of way. It was not rah, 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 yeah, rah, people scrubbing toilets and, doing, all that heavy, labor and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't like that. I went down there and I just said, let's just do this, right? And it was totally impossible, totally crazy to even think it could be done. San Diego was this, kind of medium-sized organization for Scientology that had been limping along for years and was going to keep limping along and has kept limping along for years. And I think they just opened or recently opened up their ideal org, or is going to shortly or whatever. But at the time, they were kind of going nowhere. And we had gotten this big briefing in Los Angeles from Fred Hare. He was an international PR person for Scientology. And he had just come from Russia, and this was back in 2002 or 3, right? So Russia was just taking off with Scientology, and Hungary was just starting with Scientology, and he came and briefed us about how wonderful things were over there and how, on purpose and go get them all the Russians and the Hungarians were. And I was like, fuck this. We can do that. If they can do that there, we can do it here, right? Why not? And so I made it work to get myself down to San Diego to do this project. And we basically accomplished a miracle because, no one goes into, an organization like in Scientology and recruits, 20 people in 3 weeks for, high technical training, because the auditors are people who need to be trained and stuff, right? So it was a big deal. And then I got called back just before we finished, actually. I was down there for about 3 weeks. And it was very, very successful. I mean, how could you not think that was a very, very successful thing to do? This was right before the whole push for ideal orgs and all the renovations and changes. None of that was real yet. We'd been plodding along for years trying to make these orgs go. And the big thing to get done was to get 20 auditors. This was a big, big target for every single org. Not one org had done it in the West US, at least. I think maybe one on the planet or 2 on the planet had done it. So it was a big deal to go down there and recruit all these people. And so it wasn't like this was a common everyday occurrence. So I didn't necessarily expect a ticker tape parade when I got back, but I did expect, some recognition for what had happened. And I got some. People were very, at the continental level with my fellow managers. They were excited that this had all happened. And they wanted to know how I did it and what happened and what we did. So I did a whole extensive write-up of all the specific things that we did in order to make it happen. And I knew that the only way to make this thing happen was to send somebody to the orgs, like me. I wanted to now go to the other orgs and make the same thing happen, because I knew it took an intense drive to make that happen. It wasn't just sending them, more orders on telexes and emails and stuff saying, hey, get your auditors, because management in Scientology, it sucks. It's horrible. So I knew it would take this kind of direct on-the-ground work to make it happen. And I was very excited about it because I could see, after 8 years of this, I could now see this was how to do it. This was how to make these orgs get big and really take off and really have the ability to deliver Dianetics and Scientology to a lot of people, because 20 auditors is a lot of people. You can get a lot of auditing done with that, right? Well, I came back, I did this whole write-up, we sent it out to all the orgs, and then orders came down from on high, right? Cancel Shelton's orders, just, tell them to play the birthday game, right? Which is just a mantra. It's just, it doesn't mean anything. Play the birthday game. That doesn't mean anything. So this order that came down that canceled everything that I had written up and said and done was extraordinary to me. Like, what? I thought we were all here, like this was sort of like the moment of, what? I thought we were all here to make this happen. Well, it turns out we weren't. We were there to be a bureaucracy and just get orders and send them down and get orders and send them down and run around like chickens with our head cut off if we got some new emergency that came down, right? And that was, pretty standard operating procedure for us. So that was where the light dawned on me that I was involved with an organization that didn't care about expanding its organizations and trying to actually make something effective happen. I was in a hamster wheel. That's the moment I realized it. It took 10 more years for me to realize that the organization was not just corrupt at the management level, but at all levels. It took, me having to realize that it wasn't, my overts and withholds. It wasn't my transgressions. It wasn't, because I was a bad person and been doing bad things, that I was viewing the organization in a skewed fashion, which is what Hubbard says. I had to do that whole RPF program for 3 years. I went through a number of things in order to finally realize 10 years after that initial realization about San Diego that I was in a totally corrupt organization and I needed to get out of it. And that was when I left the Sea organization. And that occurred to me on the eve of my 42nd birthday in December of 2011. And I was on a mission in Twin Cities at that time, and I wanted to finish that mission because I felt I owed it to the people of Twin Cities to finish what I started there. But, a couple months later, and I didn't tell anybody. I told my parents, and that was it. I had no inside help or anything. So then 3-4 months later, I'm back in LA, and that's when I said I want to leave. And then, 8-9 months later, I was out. So that's kind of how the sequence of events on that goes. But that was that project and me being in management and seeing, how horrible the whole thing was in terms of it saying it wanted one thing, but then doing something completely the opposite. That was the moment of truth for me, and it was all sort of downhill from there.